Friends of NAGARA, happy Thursday, and welcome to today's Sponsor Solution Series presentation by NAGARA contributor sponsor Gimmal, Simplifying the Race to AI Readiness, Why the First Mile Matters in Records Management. My name is Johnny Hadlock. I'm the Executive Director of NAGARA, and on behalf of our Board of Directors, we thank you and welcome you to today's presentation. Now, before we get going, there's just two housekeeping items that I always like to go over. Number one, today's presentation is indeed being recorded. So if you miss any part of it or want to review it later, it will be uploaded to the Sponsor Solution Series archive by tomorrow morning. We're also going to have a question and answer session at the end of today's presentation. But at any point in time, as we're going along, if you've got a question, feel free to type that into the chat box. So go ahead and look at the bottom right-hand side of your WebEx screen, look for the little chat bubble. It's there that you can enter your questions, and we invite you to do so. NAGARA is grateful to our 2025 corporate sponsors, whose logos are shown here on the screen. Without their support, it would be really difficult for NAGARA to achieve our very ambitious mission to support you, the government archivists, records managers, and information professionals. So my invitation to you is when you have a little bit of time, visit the NAGARA website and check out the company profile pages we have for each of these sponsors to learn more about the products and services that they offer to you. We're very excited that next week, Friday, the 28th, will be NAGARA's largest virtual event of the year, our 2025 Spring Online Forum, entitled and themed Risky Business, Records Management Supporting Risk Management. There will be 8 sessions in this one-day virtual event. More details can be found online, nagara.org/events. We hope you'll register. Almost 300 people have registered. All the sessions will be recorded. So even if you're not going to be able to attend live, you will be able to see those recordings if you've registered for the event. So we encourage you to do so. We're also excited to share that our biggest event of the year, in-person event, our annual conference, registration for that event is open. The preliminary program is posted online. You can make hotel reservations already. You can see our sponsors and our exhibitors. And if you've never attended an annual conference before and you're a new member of NAGARA, you can apply for a travel scholarship. So visit nagara.org/annual conference to learn more about how you can take advantage of this opportunity to join us this summer in Oklahoma City. Again, I've just talked about 2 events. The next 2 events that NAGARA is hosting, and there's going to be a slide after this to talk even more about events, are shown here on the screen. Again, next Friday, our Spring Online Forum, and following that, a week later, we've got another webinar, Developing Effective Standard Operating Procedures. nagara.org/events is where you can learn more about that. So NAGARA has in-person conferences, we have online forums, then we also have 2 other virtual offerings. We have our NAGARA webinar series, and then we have this event, our NAGARA Sponsor Solution Series. While webinars and Sponsor Solution Series presentations are quite similar, there are differences between them. Let me just quickly run over what those are for your knowledge. First of all, for a webinar, those are free to members, but they do cost non-members a $39 registration fee, while these Sponsor Solution Series, free for everybody. For webinars, we offer about 18 of those a year. And for Sponsor Solution Series, we have about 13 a year. Both are recorded and uploaded to the NAGARA webinar archive, along with the presenter's PowerPoint presentation. But here's the biggest difference. For a NAGARA webinar, the content and presentation is curated by NAGARA members and practitioners, while this Sponsor Solution Series provides a space for our knowledgeable industry leaders to curate and present the content themselves. So that's why today we have our friends from Gimmal to speak to us today. Here's a little bit about Gimmal. With digital transformation and AI initiatives accelerating, the need for a comprehensive data and information governance framework for both physical and electronic records has become more important than ever. Gimmal's end-to-end information governance solutions enable you to consistently manage the lifecycle of records, ensuring compliance requirements are met while also maturing your program over time. Additionally, sensitive data can be discovered across enterprise systems and brought into the governance framework to protect your data and mitigate any risk. Implementing a complete information governance framework will ensure that your organization's information is properly managed, protected, and leveraged to support your digital transformation journey. So don't miss the opportunity to learn about Gimmal's solutions and services and how they can support your organization. Whether it's you meeting with them at the NAGARA annual conference and events or scheduling a personalized conversation and demo on their website, they are here to help and serve you. And presenting on behalf of Gimmal today, we have Jeff Dunning and Victor Root. Jeff has served various roles over his 25 plus years as an information technology leader, consultant, and architect, helping large enterprises drive value from their technology investments. He spent the better part of his career in a leadership role consulting and advising larger enterprises on the benefits of modern information governance strategies. Jeff has worked on various roles such as strategist, architect, and project manager. He's also used his talents in other areas such as sales, engineering, and relationship building. Jeff led consulting teams in the design and implementation of large-scale content solutions for Fortune 500 companies. Jeff brings his talents to Gimmal as their director of sales engineering and helping organizations to acquire and execute on the implementation of information governance technology to meet the ever-changing requirements for compliance. His experience and thought leadership are invaluable to organizations looking for the right technology for their information governance journey, and we're grateful to have him as one of our presenters today. Victor Root is a customer success and business operations professional with over 4 years of experience driving value for clients across financial services, technology, oil and gas, and government sectors. That's you guys. He's held roles as an analyst, mid-market customer success manager, and a customer success manager specializing in client engagement, process optimization, and strategic planning. As a customer success manager here at Gimmal, Victor focuses on ensuring that organizations maximize their investment in information governance solutions. He plays a key role in supporting Gimmal's scale initiatives, including tech tips, and he works closely with clients to improve adoption, streamline their processes, and align Gimmal services with their evolving business needs. With expertise in process automation, relationship building, and strategic planning, Victor helps organizations enhance their operational efficiency and achieve long-term success. His ability to bridge technical solutions with business objectives makes him a trusted advisor, ensuring that clients not only implement best practices, but also realize measurable benefits from their information governance programs. We are delighted to have Jeff and Victor as our presenters today from our friends at Gimmal, and my friends, the rest of the hour is yours to present, so go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Johnny. Thanks for those introductions, and thanks for everybody for attending. Let me share my screen here. Hopefully I get a thumbs up from Johnny that looks good, and we go from there.
Looks fantastic.
So,
good work.
Yeah, so thanks everyone for attending, and hopefully over the course of this next 45 minutes or so, we share some information that's valuable to you. We're gonna focus in on, like what we're seeing, real examples of kind of what's going on in the space, and some of the things that we're doing along with some of our partners, some of our service partners, some of the people who are out there helping us make our customers successful. I'm going to start here with just a brief kind of introduction into the whole AI landscape. I think a lot of this information right here is pretty telling about what's going on. And it's really all about our data today is really not ready for AI. We're going to frame this discussion a little bit around Gen AI in particular, right? The co-pilots of the world and kind of how that's going. But it's really about, what's going on there in the space. And based on Gartner's 2024 impact of Gen AI in the workspace survey they did, 50%, more than half of the respondents are just limiting things to low-risk trusted users. They're not doing a whole lot of real kind of earth-shattering type of AI activities, right? They're trying to combat the oversharing, the sprawl, all those kind of things before they get to stuff. So basically what's happening is these organizations with weak IG practices, they're just finding that AI is not for them. Their adoption, their ability to do anything is it's just not there, right? And there's just new risk are emerging with each thing that happens, right? So we get AI assistants, AI agents, all those things. It's just compounding the problem, right? Just to give a little perspective in the Gen AI world is kind of how is it thinking, right? Just try to simplify this as much as possible, right? Data is collected and used to answer prompts. So people are prompting Gen AI and it's going after data, it's collecting and it's using that to answer those prompts. Basically, they're doing predicting words and learning language patterns. So they're trying to predict what the next word's going to be so they can kind of build those responses, right? That's kind of what that Gen AI is happening there. And then those transformers let AI focus on important parts of the text. So there's these AI transformers that look and say, okay, of this prompt, these are the important things, these are the important parts of it. And then we can go and get this maintaining the context of that prompt. Right? And then AI generates that response based on what it learns from the data it has access to, right? And that's probably the most important part of the whole thing. It's the data it has access to. And that's the data that we're having all those problems with. It's, garbage in, garbage out, everything we've learned in the past. So I think this is kind of repetitive. It's kind of what's out there in the space right now. But what are our expectations? Our expectations, our answers are immediately available. I want to prompt AI, Gen AI. I want to ask a question. I want to build something. I want that to be immediate, and I want it to get back to me as quick as possible, right? They may be wrong. They may be inaccurate. They may be partially valid. They might be missing data because I wasn't able to access something, right? That response just may not be accurate. The problem is that they're digested and separated at that point from their source. So even though it's wrong, we may not know it's wrong because we don't really know what the source was. So someone who's prompting AI and they get an answer back, they digest that answer, they use it for whatever use case that they have going on, not really knowing if that answer is right or wrong because they don't know what that source was. They don't know. A lot of times we don't know what data we have access to. So what did it really use to create that answer? And then we take that a little bit further and we start relying upon them. We rely upon those responses just because it's Gen AI and we're allowed to use it. So it's convenient. It's fast and it lets me get to where I want to get to a little bit quicker. Again, not really knowing kind of what is correct, what's bad, and how accurate it is. As we mentioned earlier, it's trained based on that data. So where's it getting the data and how accurate is it? Is really the end of the day problem that a lot of organizations are facing in their Gen AI rollouts. So what we are doing in the marketplace, and as we kind of get further into our presentation here, we're kind of looking at things a little bit different than we have in the past. We've been doing this record stuff for a long time at Gimmal. I personally have been doing it for a long time. And we're starting to look at it differently with our partners. And we'll kind of get into a lot of that space to allow us to kind of really get to this data quality life cycle. Right here, I believe, is the kind of the basis for everything that we're trying to get to. This is what needs to happen today so we can continue to get into the future. Organizations that have been doing this maybe took the messaging that we were delivering 3 years ago, because we've been talking about these same things for a while. Everybody on this call has probably heard it, maybe have gone after different aspects of it, but we've been talking about this data quality life cycle, this information management, this, got to do records management for a while, right? And really it gets around accuracy, how accurate is the data, eligibility, do I have access to it, how complete is it, how old or new is it, how fresh is it, and how consistent is it? That's always been the data quality. And then our kind of the parameters around AI data quality add some kind of different aspects to it. The business context aspects like, unique columns and values and product IDs have to be unique. And what does the business expect out of that data? Numerical columns always should be positive and different things like that. So there's some business context we put around it. We put around some statistics around AI data quality. missing values? Are there outliers? Do we have a lot of duplicates that might be skewing kind of information and stuff like that? So there's some statistic modeling that we have to look at from an AI perspective. And then there's just plain old logic type base there, right? Like when I'm looking at data, if we talk about sales data, like we couldn't sell 1 million widgets in a year if we only manufactured 500,000. So there's some logic based in some of the information. So some more complex kind of parameters around data quality. But if we knock out the top 5, if we're accurate, accessible, complete, and fresh and consistent, we half the battle's done, right? So that's kind of what we're going for. Now the question is how do we really get there? How do we kind of bridge the gap that we've been battling all these years to actually get there, to be able to actually classify and manage our data, and not only do it in a one-time pass. So many organizations do the one sweep. Oh, I'm going to clean up rot. I do a sweep. I get some minimization done, but I don't have any go forward kind of processes because I can't implement records for whatever reason. And there's these various kind of roadblocks that we come up against. So we have to take a little bit of a different approach there. But I think that this is the basic, this whole data quality life cycle on stuff.
Thanks, Jeff. That's kind of a nice segue into this slide. So AI is like everywhere right now, right? So, I mean, you couldn't swing a dead cat and not expect to have it come up. And everyone's really trying to figure out how to harness it. But I think there's this underlying fear of, are we actually ready? And what I'm seeing is that a lot of organizations assume just AI is plug and play. And I don't think they really realize that, AI only works as well as the data it's built on. It's like, putting a Ferrari engine in a car with no steering wheel. Sure, it's powerful, but it's not really going anywhere. I have a client that I just spoke to recently, and they were excited about using AI to automate document classification. But when we did a quick audit of their data, we actually found out that over 60% of it was rot. So, AI isn't going to solve their problem. Really, it's going to make things worse by bringing to surface that a lot of this data is, outdated or irrelevant. And Jeff, I know rather that you've worked with a lot of organizations on AI strategy. Do you find that people are underestimating how much groundwork they need to be ready, or much groundwork that needs to be done before they're ready for AI? Or
I do, and I think that's one of the limiting factors of kind of where we're going is exactly that, is that, they take an initial look at it and they're like, there's a couple things we need to do. I flip a few switches and I'm ready to go. And the journey is much bigger than that. And then they pause and they're like, okay, how do I start that journey? Like they don't even understand really. It's so daunting that it's the getting started that they're struggling with.
yeah, and I do come across that a lot, and just kind of my day to day as I'm, doing my outreach to clients. Everyone's talking about it, but no one really understands, how it works and what it takes to get them where they think they want to go.
For sure. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about kind of really getting into it and how we start to implement it. We're talking a lot with our RIM professionals about the whole concept of data quality, right? The driver for AI. One of the conversations we have, we're a solution provider. We have tech that helps kind of get you to where you kind of go, but it's really the concepts and how you implement that tech to get you to where you want to be, right? So again, just to like accurate, consistent, relevant your data, and it's kind of all your organizational data, right? You have to look at people data, skills, expertise, categories, the metadata that you have out there. You kind of really have to go to it. The underlying thing, poor data leads to inaccurate insights, unreliable outcomes. We know that. That's what's holding people back. That's why Gartner's finding that a lot of people are not doing it. So why RIM? Like why records? Why now? We've been doing this for a long time. We've been kind of like trying to push this, having these conversations. We all understand why, but why is it important now? And I think if you look at data quality and the principles around data quality, those are the RIM principles are foundational to all that stuff, right? It is retention and disposition. It's understanding the value of information, and who better to kind of get into that space than our RIM professionals. Like, that's who knows it, right? No one knows that data better. No one knows why we keep it. No one knows why we delete it, for that matter. Like, what do we need? Why do we need it? What are the regulations? Even who owns it, right? So there's people that have this information. We have to get to the table and start using this to get the results that we're looking for. And more importantly, and I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, is it's ongoing. Like, data quality is ongoing. It needs processes and procedures. It's ongoing. It's consistent. It needs someone to manage it through its life cycle. It's not a one and done. It's not a, let's do a quick cleanup and throw some classifications on some data and be done with it, right? It's not that. It's that ongoing, right? Because data that's timely today is stale tomorrow. And we have to make sure we have processes that help us manage to those concepts. And within any organization, I don't think there's anyone better. This is what we truly believe in, and what we're trying to kind of get out there is really nobody better than our records professionals to do these kind of principles, because that's what's foundational to records, right? So it's time now to maximize your seat at the table. More and more records managers are getting that opportunity to sit at the table and have around these discussions, around these data quality discussions. They're being brought in, right? So we need to embrace that opportunity. We're talking with our record managers and kind of helping them through some of these processes, right? It's time to think outside the box, leverage your experience, and most importantly, like, be open to change, be open to doing things a little bit different. And what you're going to see as we go through this conversation here is that we're taking some really foundational concepts and changing them, like taking a different view of them when we work with some of our partners around how we can get this done. I think it's really important. Good enough, maybe good enough, right? We don't have to be perfect in some situations. And most importantly, and this is what we're going to talk a lot about, is identify those big wins. I think the organizations that are successful and the organizations that are making progress is the ones that are trying to find quick wins, going after the stuff that they can do in a short period of time to show progress and show that it's actually doable. Like, we can actually do this, and that will set up your stage for long-term success in this space. But it's definitely time to rethink some of the concepts that we have out there.
This is me. We've all gotten the idea, or used to the idea, that AI should just know, right? We ask Siri, Alexa, ChatGPT a question and expect an instant, like, perfect response. But AI is only as good as the information we feed it. I had a client that I worked with a couple months ago who wanted to, do an AI-powered search to find the right document. But when we tested it, we struggled to distinguish between the final versions and the outdated drafts. And that was primarily because the organization had no standard metadata rules. So there's no version control, no clear retention policies. It was like, searching a junk drawer and hoping to find, what you need in one try. And Jeff, I know you've seen similar challenges. How are organizations, addressing these governance gaps?
Yeah, and I think kind of what you were talking about here is really what's happening in so many organizations, right? They're looking at some of the raw remediation, but they're looking at that ongoing kind of, what do I do next? Like, what's the next steps? And that's really that ongoing, like, going into governance, going into managing my records now, and really starting to oversee the whole retention and compliance to the regulations rules versus just that raw. And records teams not necessarily kind of jumping into that raw cleanup. It's been an IT kind of function in the past. And I think it's time for as the records managers start getting into that space, we're seeing those projects be more and more successful.
Yeah, and if I could add, another client, they've had success in kind of what you were just saying, in that the framing of how they presented this to the organization really helped with the success. And they framed it as being more of a company initiative opposed to, like, just an IT project. And they're able to get the buy-in because, for be it as it may, change management could be one of the most difficult things, across any sector. So yeah, that's very insightful.
Yeah, good stuff. And that buy-in is so important, right? That's the key. Like getting that leadership buy-in is what really makes things successful. And I just saw a question in chat and I want to answer it because it'll make the rest of this presentation so much easier. So ROT is redundant, outdated, trivial content. So it's kind of like an industry term for that data that has no more business value that you want to clean up, right? So duplicate data, really old data, trivial data that has no business value that we have out there, and it's kind of cleaning that stuff up. So hopefully that helped.
And I guess to maybe get you thinking more, we're actually throwing in within Gimmal an I, riot. So the I stands for inaccessible. So a good example of that would be, if you have an old WordPerfect file that you no longer have WordPerfect, so you can't open it. And we have tools and solutions that, help you kind of identify that information.
Great. Okay, so the importance of the first lap. So I like to use analogy of, this whole process here of getting, prepping your data for AI. It's like a race, a NASCAR race around the track. And it's hundreds of laps, right? It's constantly going around the laps. It's not a drag race. It's not one time down the strip and you're kind of done, right? It's really hundreds of laps to kind of get to the finish line. And really the key here, and this is what we're finding with our successful clients, the key here is that the ability to execute is probably the most important thing. You got to prove, we talked about it earlier, got to prove it's doable efficiently, effectively, but we can definitely do that. So organizations that are kind of spending the time to learn how to get around the track without hitting the roadblocks, right? Building a process that's repeatable, sustainable, it kind of gets them around the track as efficiently as possible. So we work together, we take a small piece, some low-hanging fruit, stuff that's going to give us high value with minimal effort. We kind of map our way around the track. We lay that groundwork for the journey, and we kind of get to a point where we're successful. We successfully get around the track, and we have a win. We show some progress. We deleted some data. Maybe we governed some categories and we kind of did something there, right? And what we end up doing is we build this playbook for that journey. So we build a playbook. It's repeatable. We can use it over and over. We have a process. We have technology. It's sustainable. We could easily navigate those wrecks, right? So when the accident happens in front of us, we understand how to get around it. And then we just kind of continue to do this. That playbook becomes our kind of success for getting around the track. And 80% of the time, we're probably going to be good. 80% of the laps are the same. On one curve, we're high. The other curve, we're low. We're fast in the middle. We do all those things right. Something happens. Something's a little bit different. That 20% requires some adaptability, might be a little bit harder. We're going to save those laps for the end, right? We're going to save those laps to do down the road because we're going to focus on adaptability. We're going to focus, on the 80% that are the same so that we're constantly getting the practice. And then over time, we're going to learn more and more, and we can start going after the harder stuff. And we'll look at what's the easiest and what's the hardest as we kind of go there, right? But we want to build that playbook. There's so many ways to talk about it. We want to eat the elephant one bite at a time, and the list goes on of all the ways we can talk about this. I kind of like this metaphor, this whole building this, what's the easiest way around the track, and then make that our playbook, right? And in this process, we want to start evolving the way we look at things, okay? We understand how this all works today, right? There's records and there's non-records, right? We typically only focus on records. We punt on personal information. We're going to say, oh, privacy people are going to worry about that. There's many flavors. We have official, transitory, business, convention. Like this is the typical records management kind of view of what's going on. We want to take that and we want to kind of evolve the way we look at this stuff. And we're having these conversations. We're moving kind of records managers in this new direction, and we're seeing adoption and success really go. Like let's just put all information in scope. And there's no kind of difference between records and non-records. We're just going to look at everything, okay, in one kind of big view. Personal data is king, right? Retention and disposition and cyber and all those other things, that personal data is important. We have to make sure we're understanding kind of what goes there. I think the key issue in all this stuff as we look forward is the sensitivity of the data. I think the sensitivity of the data is really important in a lot of these questions. Of how we kind of manage our data going forward. Legal and regulatory obligations are the sole reason for policy, right? Policy is driven because we have a legal or regulatory obligation to keep a particular piece of data for a certain period of time. That's how we create policies, and then we build a taxonomy on those legal obligations, right? So we start to look at things a little bit differently versus what we have in the past. We kind of stay away from the big one. We're going to talk about this a little bit, the big record plans and all this other kind of stuff, to start looking at, let's take a look at all our data. Let's find out what is sensitive. Let's find out where my obligations lie. And then whatever's left, let's just start acting on that, right? If it's not sensitive and if it's current, right? Like if it's not sensitive data and it's old, why am I even keeping it, right? If I don't have an obligation. So let's try to simplify that process. And I think, Victor, here you got a really good example of an organization that had really started small and has seen some huge success after that.
Sure, yeah. In this particular instance, the client, came back to us. They expressed a desire to reactivate Gimmal Discover. They started the project, I don't know, maybe a year or two prior, and it just, things led to it being put on the back burner for a little while. But anyway, they came back to us and they started by nominating a small subset of email inboxes to perform rock cleanup. Because they had terabytes of just data out there, and they didn't know, what within that data set was PII or anything that would be something that they would want to dispose of, right? And this client, they were particularly taken aback because they assumed that during the collection process, right, they'll be able to correctly categorize everything in the first pass. But after taking like a little peek under the covers, I was able to see that even I struggled with like the file name inconsistencies. And I immediately knew that, if I struggle, AI was going to run into the same thing and really amplify the problem. But through, sort of teamwork and effective strategy, we were able to get them settled. We got through the initial email inbox cleanup. We're nominating more email inboxes for cleanup, and then that scope of that's going to expand as they prepare to migrate all of their data from SharePoint on-prem to SharePoint online. But Jeff, sort of to kick it back over to you, from your perspective, what are the most common data quality issues that hold organizations back when implementing AI?
Yeah, and as you deal with everything, it's always the people part of it, right? So the people part of it is always difficult. People kind of hoard, right? We want to keep our information, and that change management around kind of what we're deleting always tends to be difficult there. But as you were explaining here, I kind of call it the light bulb moment. I think it just takes a little bit of time to kind of do some scanning, pick a use case, go find that data, build some dashboards, right? We have some really nice tech that gives dashboards and reports. And I think once they see that light bulb goes on, and all those walls begin to kind of tear down, and that user protecting themselves kind of go away when they realize truly kind of what is out there and what do they have and how much they really don't need it. So, the faster you can get to the light bulb moment, the better it is.
100%. Yeah, I would agree. And just as I'm looking at this slide, I realized we've been talking about like Gimmal products, and I've been assumptive in that people know what each product does. But I'll drop in the chat, links to the product pages so you can read up on it.
Oh, good thought there. Yeah, absolutely. So let's identify the groove. How do we identify what we should be doing? The groove on the track, the fastest way around the track. I think one of the problems we have, to back to your question earlier, Victor, as well, is we focus on the go forward a lot, right? We focus on the current data. When I have a petabyte of data, I grow at a terabyte a day. Going forward would de-risk a terabyte a day, but 99% of that is still within retention policies. I'm not going to really delete it. So really, you're not doing anything when you have this petabyte of data that's sitting out there. That, man, if you can remove 20, 30, 40 more percent of that data, you're reducing like massive risk, right? That stuff is out of retention periods, and it's stuff that we can go after. And to be honest with you, like, we're really seeing like those numbers are real. 30% is not uncommon for an organization to see in a very simple remediation use case and minimization use case, right? There's no difficult, like, to get 30%, you're not fine-tooth combing into every single file and really kind of spending a lot of time reviewing. You're like low-hanging fruit and getting to those numbers. So just to put that in perspective, right? If you really think about it, by the time you go forward, tech is going to continue to change and go. And a lot of people say, hey, you know what? 2 years from now, there'll probably be robots that can do the data cleanup for you. So why bother with your current stuff when you can get some better kind of spend there, right? So let's spend our time de-risking that stale legacy data. I think the biggest comment, and I love the way this is kind of worded out, legacy data is the single biggest risk at organizations. And that's 100% absolutely true. That is, and there's so many terms out there for it, right? That's the dark stuff. That's the stuff we don't know about. That's the needle in the haystack. That's the stuff the hackers want to get their hands on when they come into your environment, right? They're not necessarily looking for the most current stuff. That legacy data is where they get the most value in that process there. So what do we do? How do we kind of go at it, right? So what we want to do is we want to kind of do that metadata scan, the wrapper scan, call it different things. We want to get information about the files. So we want to do what's the fastest. So we go out, we do the really fast thing, we get meaningful, actionable insights from that metadata scan, file path, file extension, dates, and all that type of stuff. And in that information, you'd be surprised at things that you can learn in that information, right? Like, the things that we see out there that are really common across the board. It's not just one organization, right? Hey, do not use, to be deleted, right? Archive, it's got, the folder's called archive and it's 7 years old. Like, these are things that are simple, low-hanging fruit to kind of go after cleanup. And metadata scan will give you that stuff. And what that does is it kind of makes the volume of data that you need to go deeper on for the sensitivity side of things a lot smaller, so you can get through it at the pace you need to get through it. If you tried to do all your data and go deep on it, that scanning process, it's gonna take a really long time to do. Look at things like PSTs and laptop backups, and then the file types and junk and extensions like Victor was talking about, the inaccessible stuff. Go find all that stuff, blow it away. That's kind of like early action, simple. We don't need a file plan to do this. We can kind of do it based on just this minimal information, right? We want to forget the use cases. So many customers, and this happens to us all the time, almost every conversation we're at, there's someone on a call when we're trying to talk about the tech and what it does, and they want to jump to the kind of the edge cases. They want to jump to that red box, right? They're active, sensitive, confidential data, and like, how do we clean this up? Like, don't worry about that. That's harder. It's more work. It's current. You probably need it. Secure it for sure, but let's not worry about the cleanup there. Let's focus on the blue boxes on the bottom. Let's focus on the non-business data, which is the easiest, got the highest value, not a whole lot of decisions to make, so that we can really look at stale, sensitive data. The risk reduction in stale, sensitive data is the highest, right? That's the data. It's beyond a retention period. Look, if your organizations have a records retention schedule, and there's no period longer than 10 years, any content that is greater than 10 years old should not be around anymore. Just by default, there should not be any arguments over that. That's an easy process to go after data. And everybody's like, 10 years, like, yeah, we can show you, I got slides in here that can show you kind of stuff out there from real organizations where 10, 15, 20 years of create date content is out there in small subsets of their data that we've kind of analyzed. So that's the goal. Get the low-hanging fruit, focus on that lower right-hand box, the stale sensitive data. That's your biggest risk reduction. Stay away from the top part of it in that space. And kind of this is stuff that we've been kind of looking at with our clients, Victor. And I know you work closely with them and probably have a lot of experience in this space.
Yeah, no, for sure. I come across a lot of organizations that want to like automate everything all at once. But in my opinion, that would almost be like, deciding to run a marathon without doing any training first. And you've got to start with the first lap, just to kind of echo what you've been saying throughout this webinar, Jeff. Start with something that's manageable, that proves value quickly. And I think the graphic that you showed on the last slide really puts that into light. And to kind of tie that to like a real life example, I had a client who was drowning in duplicate records. And instead of trying to like overhaul their entire system, they started with something small. They started with automating the duplicate detection. And then after they did that, they were able to do the cleanup. So basically Discover came in, did a pass, identified, things that were out of retention. They were able to delete it. Good, right? First easy, manageable step. And to kind of tie that to, again, what you've been saying earlier, that first, capturing the low-hanging fruit, that quick win really helped them build confidence. And from there, they're able to, they were ready in a sense. But Jeff, looking back at the graphics you showed, a question came to mind. If you had to recommend like the first lap to organizations, what would that be like to get started?
Yeah, and we, with most organizations, we talk about two things in that first lap, and that is age, right? So find some age, 10 years, 15 years, something that's outside your kind of typical records of retention that's above it. So that stuff wouldn't be, you have no obligation to kind of keep that stuff. Look at that. And then we have some formulas around what we call high confidence ROD that helps us find things like 0-byte files and temp files and all these other kind of things, and use that formula. And those two buckets right there, you get that approved prior to even doing the scan and saying, hey, if anything that falls in here, we could just get rid of it. That's the low-hanging fruit, right? It's stuff that doesn't require people to kind of get involved in a review process because it meets that criteria. And those are the areas that we really go after, the really old stuff and what we have in that high confidence kind of rock bucket that we share with our clients, and they get to tweak it. Of course, it's not fixed, and that's kind of gets us started, gets the engine rolling, finds the groove, and off we go.
Sure. And just kind of follow up, what does that typically start in an organization? Is that something from the top down, like general counsel, and it trickles down, or is it from like the records management team going up?
It's typically the records management team going up. That's the seat at the table, right? That's getting them that visibility into the organization, and then going back and saying, hey, like, here's what it is. Like, here's why, because they understand the whys. Why is content greater than 15 years old brought to us? And they understand that why, so they can take that why up. And they usually take it up to get that buy-in. Then we do that small project, and that small project allows them to go back and say, here's what we found, here's what we got rid of. And then we even help our clients kind of expand that over space and say, if this is what 100 terabyte looks like, could you imagine what a petabyte looks like? So it's good stuff that way.
Yeah. Well, the reason I asked that question is because I see all that, they've defined their parameters, right, of what we keep and what we get rid of. But yet they still have this process in which once now they've identified that, they still seek approval before actually getting rid of it. Do you have any like recommendations to overcome that?
Yeah, and that's the place to keep it simple, right? That's where we don't want to get into the gray areas, and everybody understands where we kind of get into the gray areas. If you don't have a really confident and consistent why it's rot, like greater than 15 years, it's rot because we don't have a record category that obligates us to keep any piece of content for more than 15 years. Therefore, by default, it's rot. That's the why. When that why is concrete and set in stone, it's a lot easier to do it without review. Right? If the file is 0 bytes, no one needs it. If the file starts with a tilde, like you have all these files, like you use Word, you type in Word, crashes, it leaves behind this stupid file. You'd be surprised how much space those take up. They're temporary files. We don't need them. Simple, delete. No one needs to approve that. Those are what we have to go after because they got very well-defined whys.
I'm going to borrow that on my next client call.
Awesome. All right. So a concept. This is something that we're kind of using with our partners out in the space. So our TAC and a little bit of our service partners working with clients we call it 8 weeks to delete. And it's really kind of sets up a progress of where you can start to finish in a matter of 8 weeks, actually show some kind of progress, some remediation or minimization of some data, right? Quick project plan, right? We analyze your existing records management system, policies, storage subsystems. It's really important to understand with the records retention schedules and that kind of stuff. And I don't have a lot of that lined out here, but the goal is to simplify it. The goal is to go from 150 to 200. We would really like to get under 30, right? This is the whole concept of like, let's rethink what we're doing in the record space. To get to that concept, it's a whole different discussion and there's a lot more behind it, but it's doing things like, a simple example is, my accounting department has 2 retention times. They either keep it for 7 years or 10 years, and that's it across the board. But yet they have 42 categories. Like, why can't that be 2? A 7-year and a 10-year. The description is all these documents go in there. We just went from 40-something to 2. A lot easier to implement, to go forward, and to move fast with, right? It kind of gets us that kind of stuff. So we're doing all that kind of work in the Gimmal's file plan and the Gimmal's record system so that we can start managing records. We're doing a scan of repositories, the metadata first, so we can find that low-hanging fruit things. And then the data that doesn't fall in there, we go deeper and we rank risk. And then there's a roadmap to active deletion. So as long as everything kind of falls in place, you can kind of get to a point where you can hit the delete key in 8 weeks. Just to take it a little bit deeper, we'll share these slides and you can kind of see what's going on here. But in week 1, we do a kickoff. We do this analysis, existing policies. So we kind of really get all that information together. In week 2, the stakeholders come together. Our partners will help do the records retention schedule revisions, and we'll use Gimmal Tech to kind of get it in there, but we're really kind of starting to build that tech out, as well as look at the low-hanging fruit disposition, deleting the stuff that we kind of really don't have to go deeper on. We streamline the records management system, takes a couple weeks. We get it into the Gimmal file plan, so we get that whole thing ready. During that time, we're doing that scan. We rank our risk. We develop those risks, so we do some insights and reporting, a lot of Power BI stuff where you get a lot of charts and graphs to say where it is, and here's your high probability rot. Here's how it's divided up. You can click in, actually see the files, so you can start looking at that stuff. Week 6 is the roadmap. 7 is we're aligning stakeholders around that roadmap and around those findings. And then we get to where in week 8, we're laying that path out to kind of go forward and that type of stuff. So it's really a process that it's newer to us. It achieves the goals that we've been seeing our customers being successful, right? So this shorter program, getting results early. I think I've said that a lot in this whole thing, but I think that these are the things that we're seeing customers being successful on. So it's one of the things we're doing kind of with our partners. It's newer to us. It's something going out. You're going to hear us talking a lot about it, but The stuff is in place to actually kind of accomplish these things today. We have the relationships and the people and the processes together where we can help customers down this path. And again, it's a combination of tech that we have and then a little bit of services work with some of our partners.
And Jeff, if I can just jump in really quick to kind of take it a
Yes.
step further with the 8 weeks to delete, right? I'm constantly asked, can you identify or name any clients who have successfully cleaned up rot? And I think the answer to that question is while there is, methodologies like the 8 weeks to delete, realize too that rot cleanup is something that's ongoing, right? It's something that is constantly going to be going in the background. And while you do have those small quick wins, realize that it's not something that falls into like, oh, okay, it took, I don't know, 6 months or however long to do that process.
Sorry, Victor, I was distracted with a whole bunch of questions popping up in front of my face. Can you
Yeah,
do that
no,
again for me?
no, it happens to me all the time. I actually have to turn off my notifications to keep myself from glancing over. But just saying that, in addition to the 8 weeks to delete, realize that rock cleanup, this is a process that's ongoing, right?
Yeah.
And, constantly I'm asked, like, can you name any clients who've successfully done X, right? And it's like, it's a little hard because it's something that kind of once you start it, it just keeps going.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's the whole thing about the playbook and the 8 weeks to delete. Really, the end result of that thing is that recommendation roadmap that comes out of it at the end. That's the tool you're going to use to apply to everything else that's going on. Now, there's things that you have to do that are different, approvals and that kind of stuff. But really, kind of once that thing is churning, it goes, and that's why a lot of times in your cases you see that early kind of lap with your customers, and then all of a sudden there's like you don't hear as much, right? Unless we kind of reach out and ping them. It's because they got that roadmap and that fast way around the track, and they come back maybe 6 months later because they hit that wreck and they don't know what to do with a particular thing. But in the meantime, they've done a lot of work.
No, yeah, I agree. And it becomes rinse and repeat at that point,
Yeah,
right? So they use us
absolutely.
from a services standpoint to get it stood up, right? And then once you kind of define those data sets and those rules, right, then it just run in the background.
Yep, absolutely. Let's take a couple questions here as we're starting to run out a little bit of time, but there's one about insights. Once we have insights and decisions, how do we get things deleted or quarantined? It seems like it's the hard part. And yeah, that always was and is the question from a lot of people is like, it's one thing to get insights, but now how do I act on those insights? And a little plug here to think about. One of the things with Gimmal's Discover product is the ability to make decisions and perform actions in workflows. And what I mean by that is not only does it go out and find the data and the information about that data, but we can simply create workflows that make decisions on it. Hey, as I'm going through here, if this file is 0 bytes, I'm going to delete it. And it's just going to happen as part of that workflow. It's not a process. There's a lot of tools out there that'll give you that big report and say, here's 17,000 0-byte files. Like, what do you do next, right? Do I take that and go find every one of those files and hit the delete key? It's not going to happen, right? One of the things with the Gimmal tool is we're able to build that into the workflow. We can make those things happen. We can automate your kind of disposition of content that meets certain criteria. So that high probability rot, boom, just kind of happens once we agree to it. If it's 0 byte, if it's a tilde, if it has this dot, if it's greater than 15 years old, decision made, delete. And all that is audited and kept, but it's automated retention on that stuff. So good question. And yeah, there's the workflow is a big piece of what we do at Gimmal. Any other questions? See anything else populating out there?
Hey, Jeff, just a quick one. I saw Sylvia mention, how do you identify who has the authority to delete rot in an organization? And
So
my
usually,
apologies if you admit it, if you said it, but I missed it.
yeah, usually in that kind of realm there's a process for approving a records retention schedule. There's all those kinds of things. So somewhere in the organization that exists. I'm going to say typically it's at the GC level, right? Someone at that kind of a level, might not be a general counsel. Might just be, whatever their kind of role is, but typically there's some legal role in that space. They're the ones that say, yeah, I'm okay with deleting 0-byte files. I'm okay with deleting these tilde. Like, I'm okay with this policy, sign off. The records management organization is really the people who should be doing the disposition of that content once that policy is created. So records management would own the workflow that I just talked about. They got approval on the policy, they'd build the workflow. They would be the ones that would run that workflow and do that work against legacy data and even ongoing as we get there. So Victor, let's wrap this up. We got 4 minutes to end. That was good timing on our part. You got any kind of last words or any kind of words of encouragement for our audience?
Sure. Yeah. Just to kind of go back to my earlier comment, realizing, right, we have this playbook and this framework for the 8 weeks delete, but there's always that element of this process that is ongoing, and just not to get discouraged. Really, I run into that a lot of times with clients that they get buy-in, executive buy-in to start these projects. It goes, they knock out whatever they were intending to do, and then they don't use the solution anymore until there's like another need. And my advice to the audience and to my clients is always better to be proactive than to be reactive, and to leverage the solution to get to the end result. So think outside of the box. Maybe you wanted to clean up M365 email, but that doesn't have to be the end goal, right? What else can we do? Maybe we should take a look at those file shares, and how can that also help and benefit our records management program overall, right? You can clean up a lot of stuff, but you got to start first.
Yeah, no, super great points. And for me, I want to go back to the early part of the presentation there, and I think that more than likely, most organizations are dealing with the how do we take advantage of all this new tech? How do we take advantage of Gen AI and things like that? I know so many places in the government have just banned the use of things like Copilot because they just don't have a good feel for the data and what would happen if they kind of released it. And I think, if you sit in a records management office and you kind of understand all this stuff, now's the time to put it together and go up the ladder a little bit and say, hey, I got an answer for your problems. So, you want to take advantage of this stuff? I know how we can put ourselves in a position to kind of be in the forefront of leading this stuff. And the foundation that you have as a records manager, people who've been in this information management space for so long, the foundation we have lends itself so well to what needs to be done here. And for once, we're not going and talking about risk. I know even me personally, I love these conversations because I'm not going to people and saying, hey, you got to clean up your data because you're going to get breached and you have a lot of risk. The risk message is kind of been worn out. We can now go to upper management, and we can say things like, I know how you can get more value out of your data. I know how you can make your data help make business decisions. I know how we can use this new Gen AI stuff. I know how we can use it safely. That to me is way more exciting than, gosh, we have a lot of risk and we're going to get hurt if we get breached. So I'm excited about it. And that's kind of the message that I like to have with conversations, have with so many people that I get to talk to when I'm out and about at conferences and things like that. So hope this was beneficial. I hope there's some tidbit of information that we gave you that's helpful. I think we said the slides would be coming, and if you have questions about what we do at Gimmal, don't hesitate to reach out. And Johnny, thanks again for the opportunity to do this.
Hey, you bet. Thank you, Gimmal, for supporting NAGARA as an organization, but really more particularly our members, the archivists and the records managers on the front lines doing all of this work. Thanks for your support of them. And thanks, Victor and Jeffrey, for today's presentation. And to all of you who have stuck around for this presentation, thank you. That's right. The recording and the presenter's PowerPoint will be in the Sponsor Solution Series archive by tomorrow morning, and we'll email you then. So until next time, thanks everyone, and goodbye.